Wanted to welcome everyone to today's webinar. The topic is, are you conquesting enough new vehicle sales? We're really excited to have everyone. Just wanted to again welcome everyone. If you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to use your GoToWebinar sidebar. You're going to see a spot there at the end where it says questions. Go ahead and type out your questions throughout the webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and answer all of those, provide the questions, and have David Metter, our speaker today, answer those questions at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, before we introduce our speaker, I wanted to briefly give you a background on HookLogic, as well as their AutoHook suite of solutions. When dealers and OEMs ask what HookLogic does in automotive, the easy answer is that we're the ultimate attribution engine. Not only do we identify the highest intent to buy customers from your website and also third-party leads, we drive over 30% of them into your showroom. That's almost double the national show rate of 17%. And we attribute these showroom visitors to sales. This means that we can track that customer through the lead, the showroom visit, purchase, and deliver a cost per sale that is best in the industry. Thousands of dealers use our products every day, and HookLogic has driven over 600,000 redemptions. That's actually showroom visitors for their customers. The HookLogic suite of solutions includes Web2Show, our website conversion tool, Lead2Show, our post-lead product that uses actionable data and targeted filters to drive the highest intent buyers into your showroom, and Mobile2Show, the best-in-class showrooming solution. HookLogic is proud to partner with a number of the best names in the automotive industry, including Dealer.com, Polk, Contact At Once, and CallSource. HookLogic also services a number of the OEMs, including Chrysler, General Motors, Kia, Subaru, and others in the automotive industry. HookLogic was one of the first vendors in automotive to adopt a responsive technology. This allows the customer to be engaged no matter what device they're using. A little bit about our presenter today. Our presenter is David Metter. He's the president of automotive for HookLogic. The AutoHook products were developed during David's tenure as Chief Marketing Officer of a large dealer group, Mile One Automotive. The topic of conquest sales was especially important to David. During his 6-year tenure, Mile One's market share increased each year, mainly by using the data and execution that will be discussed today. Welcome, David.
It always helps to take yourself off of mute when you're introduced. Alicia, thank you very much. I appreciate the warm introduction. And I'm excited today because arguably this is what this topic today has truly defined my personal success and really the success of the different teams that I've been on in the time that I've been in the auto business. And quite frankly, could have never envisioned that the product solutions that we built here at HookLogic would ultimately bring us back to the ability to conquest and conquest at a high rate. So I'm really excited today to jump into the discussion, and more importantly, to give you some execution pieces to really think about and to be able to layer into what you do, whether you're at the OEM agency level or at the dealership level. And so, you know, the real question is, are you conquesting enough vehicle sales? And I love the image that you're looking at, because this is what most of us kind of see, especially at the dealership, in the dealership world, about how we go about driving those consumers into our dealership that don't currently have our vehicles in their garage. And really, that brings us to the definition of conquest sales. And you know, if you've ever been on any of my webinars, I'd like to kind of get this out of the way. I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what we're about to discuss. And conquest sales are really, you can break it down into two definitions, in that it is a sale at the manufacturer level to a consumer that owns a vehicle from another manufacturer. And so, as an example, if you own a Toyota and that's in your garage and you go and you purchase a GM vehicle, then you are a Conquest sale for General Motors. And the same thing can apply at the dealership level, and this is something that dealerships have to not only think about driving that consumer into their make, but also how do they differentiate themselves from their like-make competitors within their market. And so we're going to discuss both of those today. And so, where do Conquest sales come from? And when I asked that question of myself, I thought about, how babies, are born. And so I don't certainly want to make it a discussion like that, because that can go wrong if any of you have kids and they get to the age of when they start asking that question. It's a tough conversation. But this is going to be a much similar or a much simpler discussion today. And I also want to differentiate loyalty and conquest, because loyalty is super important at the dealership level. And I will tell you, in most cases, really that was my foundation as a salesperson, a manager, a GM, and really because of my background at Autobase and CRM, that was what kind of stitched me together in the industry up until the time that I went to Mile 1. And so we had a great foundation of CRM success in those previous teams, because that's what we knew and that's what I knew personally. Loyalty is about driving those existing opportunities that you have. People you sold cars to for years, have them through your service drive, and then they become real loyalists to your brand, whether it's your dealership or the brand that you serve at the OEM level. But then there's this conquest piece, and I got to tell you, when I first joined Mile 1, I never told them this, but I didn't have true vision. I was fortunate enough to spend some months in the Cobalt offices back in the early days, in 2003 and 2004-ish, that time period. And because of their background in the website business, they were really kind of the early in and really understood that space. I had the ability to kind of see that the conquest opportunities were really going to be driven in the web space. And this is, I know this is not new news now, but in 2004, it was truly, new news. And so I also knew what the reality is. And whether it was 2004 or now 2000, as we go into 2015, we know that the market competition is certainly getting crazy. And so if an OEM is looking at this, they know that they're going to have to conquest at a really high rate to just stay where they are as far as their market share goes. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. A solution for a manufacturer is just to go into a space that they're not in. So, the Nissan Leaf is a great example of that. Nissan had, this vehicle that was completely different in the industry, completely, electric, and they were, once they launched, those pre-orders, as you can see, the majority of those consumers were new to the Nissan brand. And I can tell you personally, we own a Nissan Leaf in our family, and we had never purchased a Nissan prior to that. So, we're a great example because we wanted an electric car that didn't have any gas option, and the Nissan Leaf was the most affordable opportunity, within that class. So that's one example of how you can just go and kind of create your own conquest opportunity. But then there's the one that we all know, at the OEM level down to the dealer level, and it's about offering something to the consumer for them to jump ship. And so this example we know quite well, because this happens across not just Kia, but it happens across all of the OEM brands, where they'll go and conquest off of another brand in order to drive their opportunities, their market share, their sales up. And so brands that even we serve, we watch very intently. I was fortunate enough to be at this meeting when the Subaru president announced where they wanted to be as far as yearly sales total. And for Subaru to be at 500,000 units, they have to conquest. They have no option, because conquesting is the only way to get to those numbers, because there's only so many people that have a Subaru currently in their garage. And that's the only way that you're going to drive those sales numbers. And while I was investigating Conquest sales, I will tell you that this one really kind of caught my eye. It was something that AutoTrader put out, and they do this monthly. And if you're a customer of AutoTrader, you can go in and you can see a lot of their great data. And I would suggest that you do this, not just at AutoTrader, but Cars.com has great research data. KBB does the same. All of the different endemic, Edmunds is obviously in that bucket as well. You'll want to utilize this data, and we'll talk about this in a second, to kind of formalize, a good game plan. But when I was looking at this, a couple of things that kind of stuck out to me. Where Ford continues to lose market share, and their answer is obviously increased production, which I thought was kind of interesting. But then I look at the big winner, and we're fortunate enough that we serve Chrysler, and I like to say at some small level we had some influence into these numbers. But think about Chrysler, where their big win this year has been in this market share opportunity to really conquest well. I think it's interesting, not by accident, that they didn't have a lot of brand new models. So it wasn't like they carved out a new area. They didn't have an electric car, or they didn't bring out some specialty vehicles. Really, a lot of their new model launches were replacing old model launches like Chrysler 200 and Cherokee. So I think that gives some credence to, you don't necessarily have to go out and build something that's exclusive in the marketplace. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for you, whether you're at the OEM agency level or at the dealership level, to do this. But at the dealership level, what happens typically is dealerships will just piggyback off of what the OEM is doing. And in this case, which I think is great, that there's that synergy between Tier 1 down to Tier 3. I'm all for that. But I think that it may not move the needle the way that a dealership would want, because the customer has to be there in order to have that. Is the customer going to be influenced by this, or will they even know about it if there isn't that great advertising ability and that draw into the dealership? The question is pretty easy to answer, I think, with some of the data. But this is where dealerships typically find themselves. If they want to conquest, they go back to their traditional thinking. And anytime I hear same as it ever was, because of my age, I think, in the early days of MTV when they actually showed music videos, you think about the Talking Heads and the way that they used to, sing through same as it ever was. And that's where direct mail falls. And I'm not saying that direct mail doesn't have its place, because it absolutely does in connecting opportunities, especially in the conquest piece, to your dealership. I just don't think it's the first thing that you should be thinking about. So the first thing I do believe that you should be thinking about is formalizing a game plan. I'll tell you, as I look back, and this is, I think, just a thing of getting older and more mature in my career, is I think back to all of the things that we failed at and the things that we succeeded at. The one thing that I can tell you that success always followed was sitting down and going, okay, I'm going to look at data, and I can be very emotional, but I should be emotional about factual data. So compiling stats is a very important piece to this. And when I say watch game film, I don't mean watch game film. I mean, what is going on in your space? Be a student of the industry and thinking through exactly what's happening. Whether or not you want to follow it is really kind of immaterial. It's just a matter of knowing exactly what your competitors are doing, whether it's at the OEM level or agency level, or pushing down into that dealership market space and seeing what's going on. And then being able to decide, is this the path you want to take, or is it not the path you want to take? And then you start diagramming your plays. You think about your executables, and then you start practicing those and getting to a point where you are really the subject matter expert. And then you start executing on those. Again, I go back to my Mile 1 days, and I think about early on in 2004 and 2005 when things were just starting to settle in the internet lead management side, and we made a conscious decision that Conquesting was going to absolutely start and stop with that play in digital. And so we had to decide how we were going to execute within that, to diagram those plays, to practice it out, and throw away the things that didn't work, and then when it came to game day, execute really well. And so the first thing let's do is let's compile some stats, because numbers typically don't lie. And so when we look at these numbers, see what goes up and see what goes down. Now, I know that you all know this, and the number from digital and internet are going up. So you know that. But some of the things that you may not know, and think about how you conquest currently, when you see direct mail falling, and falling at a pretty good clip, should you be putting direct mail as a conquest option as your #1 option? I would argue easily no. Does that mean it doesn't have its place? It absolutely has its place. But it should be complementary to the other things that are going well. And I think the best example of this is we typically, at the dealership level, will put money into TV and radio, knowing that that's really our conquesting opportunity. And yet, we can see that those two, along with direct mail and some other pieces like outdoor ads, they're falling. So again, maybe we need to kind of recalibrate our thinking and where we put our money if indeed these are the places that we're looking to as a primary conquesting opportunity. Make sure that we're fishing where the fish are. The other thing that you need to do is base your decisions in reality. And so as much as you may not want to admit to it, third-party sites are really good sites. Just like third-party leads could potentially be good leads. I'm not saying that all third-party leads are great leads. I'm not saying that all third-party sites are good sites. But I am saying that the reality is when a consumer goes there, we've got to fish where the fish are. So I'm not going to put all my money there, but I'm also not going to make poor decisions and taking all my money out of there. And so I made those poor decisions at some point in my tenure where I was responsible for millions and millions of dollars of advertising, and it hurt because it was a bad decision. And so look at these numbers and base your spend accordingly so that you're driving consumers that are there, where I said fish where the fish are. And also be very, very mindful of what the customer is using as far as the search. Now last month we talked a lot about mobile and showrooming, and I will tell you that that's an area where personally as a company we're going to spend a lot of time in the first couple of months of 2015 because personally we believe that we have this great solution. Now I'm not here to sell you on that. I'm here to sell you on where your customers are. And so if your customers are in very specific spaces, you've got to make sure that you're rendering properly in those spaces, and if your primary opportunity is to conquest them, make sure that you have something that's going to kind of drive them into your dealership or drive them to your brand. And so, if these are the questions that you're going to ask yourself, you've got to make sure that you strategize around it. So where's your audience? What's the awareness of your audience? And what is your competition doing? And how are you going to compete with that? And so, ultimately, what's the question? How do you grade out in that positioning? So that's a good start to kind of deciding how you're going to move forward. And I always tell people to kind of, at that point, don't get freaked out. Just keep calm and seize the day. And I'll tell you why I say that. And I'll say that over and over. It's because in most cases, if you've gotten to this point, you're already ahead of your competitors because they haven't gone through those strategic steps of really understanding where they need to go. They just kind of do things as a reactionary mode. And that's not where you want to be. That's not what keeps you sane. So let's think through some execution points. And I'm not going to make these really, really tough. They're going to be very, very simple. And hopefully you'll take 1 or 2 away. I'm going to give you 8. So differentiate yourself from your competitors. That's the easiest thing to do. Very simple to do. The second one is develop a referral program. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but I will tell you, if you go back to the stats, referral programs are still a huge piece to driving new customers in. And in most cases, your competitors aren't doing this. I'm shocked and amazed that more OEMs don't do this, because there are serious brand loyalists. I will tell you personally, we are on our 10th GMC Cadillac Escalade Chevy Suburban type vehicle. So we've owned Suburbans, Tahoes, Yukons, and Escalades. I drive a Yukon now. I'm extremely loyal to that brand because it has fit my needs, it allows us to tow, we have a large family, and it's been a great product. Like, I know that product inside and out. I am probably the best referral for GM when it comes to that product. One of the best. So I should be referring other customers to that brand, which I will tell you I definitely do. And I'm not part of a referral program. But if I were, that would give me more incentive to drive those consumers into my local GM dealership where I do business. This truly is old school marketing, absolutely, without a doubt, because it is the best social element. I don't have to go on Facebook, or I don't have to tweet out that I bought a GMC Yukon. I can pull up to my kid's soccer game, and everyone talks about the 2015 Yukon and how it's different than what they drive currently, maybe a 2013 or 2012, because of the body style and all the cool new technology stuff. That's the best opportunity to join that loyalty and conquest opportunities at the hip. Reputation management, huge. Very simply put, new customers to you, whether you're at the dealership level or at the OEM level, they absolutely care about reviews. Just like you care about restaurant reviews before you walk into a restaurant. How many people will go and look at different open table or look at different local reviews before they walk into that restaurant? I can tell you, I'm in Huntington Beach, California today. Before I walk into a restaurant tonight, I'm going to look up and see what the reviews are before I spend $20, $30, or $40. You know for a fact that when consumers are going to spend the money that they're spending on an automobile, they're going to do this. And I'll tell you, it is one of the brightest things that it certainly wasn't my idea. It was somebody on our team at Mile One that early on decided that we were going to get into the market of reputation management, before reputation management was that, where we were doing online reviews and really holding ourselves accountable. We thought it was an operations play, but quite frankly, it turned into the social aspect of driving opportunities that had never looked at our Mile One brand or at the brand of our cars into our dealerships that helped us to turn those consumers into loyalists. Step 4, target areas of market share. Like, be smart. Look at where you fail and you succeed within your market area. This is something that we preach every day at our company, because these are opportunities to drive consumers that either don't know you or haven't had an opportunity to see you past your competitors, specific to the wants and needs that you have at your dealership or your brand. Drive those consumers in. We do this every day at the different levels, whether it's at a dealership or even all the way up to a national Tier 1 OEM program, where we're driving those consumers past the competitors into our dealerships that we serve. And I'll tie it back to the Chrysler example. I believe truly that we were able to help that Conquest number and that market share increase number, because not only have we seen their numbers go up, but we've been able to validate that. And we do that for our dealerships every single day. Here's another area where I completely believe that dealerships can win. You talk about that moment of truth. We've heard that for years. Well, this is the mobile moment of truth. When consumers are trying to make a decision and they're on their mobile phones and they need to get a map, they need to get some little push to get them to go into that new brand. And so consumers will look up Nissan dealership, or they'll look up Cadillac dealership, or whatever it is, and you've got to make sure that you play in that area where those consumers are. More importantly, you want to go and target the areas where you're weak or where you have competitive opportunities against other dealerships and other brands. And that's where, because there's so many advances now in geofence or geo-targeted advertising, whether it's at the traditional level, the mobile level, or even in-site advertising opportunities to drive those consumers to your brand. And then last month we talked about how do you conquest from other dealers' showrooms. And that was really our showrooming solution. I don't want to go into sell job, but I will tell you, because it's completely a differentiator for you and certainly drives the conquest ability, we have the ability to go out to consumer on behalf of a brand or down to a dealership and target their competitive dealerships in the market. And if a consumer's at those competitive dealerships and they pull up our dealership's website or our brand's websites, it will allow us to go after those consumers with a different message, maybe an incentive at a higher dollar amount to drive those consumers into, in this case, our GM dealership. So not only can you overlay great mobile advertising on endemic sites or mobile apps or local advertising sites on mobile, but then you pair it with the opportunity to go after consumers that are sitting in competitive showrooms. And this happens every day. But then if you're spending money in endemic sites where you're putting your listings on those sites, or you're doing advertising that's co-opted by the OEM, your manufacturers, kind of differentiate yourself in those opportunities. Don't just put your inventory up there. Make sure that there's compelling reasons for that consumer to pick you over any other competitor that also lists on there. And I promised you that I wouldn't forget about opportunities in direct response campaigns. And so there are great ways to conquest, but it comes down to the data. It really comes down to who you're targeting. So creative is awesome, and messaging is awesome. But really, if it goes to the wrong people, that's the problem. And there's so much great data, whether you work with companies like Polk, or you work with companies like Datalogix, or you work with other data companies that help you to really dissect down to obvious intenders in the marketplace and to be able to flip them even in the traditional mail or email campaigns. You can attribute those consumers obviously back to your dealership. And when I say attribute, I really mean inspect what you're going to expect. So when you draw out those opportunities, those game plans, and you practice and then you execute, how are you going to know how you grade yourself out? You've got to make sure that there's great attribution data. So work with companies that are going to help you attribute those consumers into your showroom. And so what I would really want to tell you is just make it happen. You know, if you've ever been around me, I always talk about execution. There's nothing worse than people doing a bunch of stuff and not doing anything about it. So, you know, be a pro. You know, make yourself a rock star and make the people around you at your dealership, at your agency, or around your manufacturer office into rock stars too. Because there's nothing worse than having all of this and not doing anything about it, because that's where you're going to have your market share leave you. Because remember, conquest sales have two ways. You can conquest and bring opportunities into your brand. Somebody's got to lose them, and you don't want to be on that side of the fence. And so on Thursday of this week, we're going to release a white paper around Conquest sales. I didn't want to kill you with data from that white paper today, but I will tell you that it has been one of the things that we've worked on with Polk over the last 3 months. If you know anything about our company, we absolutely drive high-end tenders into the dealership, and we attribute those to sales at a high rate. That's what we're known for in the industry. But we also drive high loyalty to the brand. But the question's always been, can we drive Conquest new customers that don't currently have those vehicles into the garage into our dealerships? And the answer, as you will see in the white paper, based on factual data, is a clear yes. In fact, overall, from our brands, you're going to see nearly double the ability that brands currently have to conquest. So as an example, our Honda dealers that we serve have about a 70% conquest rate, which means of the consumers that are driven into their showroom and purchase Hondas, 70% of them have a Honda in their garage currently. And that's a big number because Honda as a brand only has a 29% conquest rate because lots of people own Hondas. But Honda isn't the only success story. We've seen great increases with our partners like Subaru, Chrysler, Kia, and all of our other brands. So we're really excited for you to see the white paper because it'll be good to kind of digest that data after you've seen some of the executables and the opportunities that we've been able to roll out today. And as a thank you, you'll actually get the white paper before it's released into the marketplace. We will also have a link included in our December newsletter. And then Jeff Kirshner will have a release on our blog that will include not only the white paper, but also the link for the webinar today if you'd like to share this out. And with that, I'd like to end the discussion, but more importantly, open up the floor for any questions that, that you may have.
Thank you, David. This is Alicia again, folks. Incredibly useful information this afternoon. We do have a quick question, David. How has technology changed the way dealers are conquesting new sales?
Well, I think that that I talked about the numbers in one of the first graphs where you've seen a dramatic increase in where the consumer is. And if the consumer is there, that's where they're the best opportunity to conquest. I talked about traditional thinking, and really the only way that dealerships have ever been trained to conquest, for the most part, is to buy a list of opportunities and intenders and then send out a direct mail piece. But I think with the evolution of digital, that's completely changed. And I will tell you, it's going to dramatically change again. It's going to shift again because if we're now seeing between 35 and 40% of total site traffic coming from mobile devices in 2014, in 2016, what's that going to look like? What is our industry opportunities around conquesting going to look like? I think it's going to change dramatically.
Great, thank you. We have a few more here. The next question, what marketing tools and then non-technology are best utilized to conquest new sales?
I think referral programs, easily. I think that, if I could go back and redo anything in my time at Mile One, it would have been to develop a formalized referral program. We talked about it and didn't make the investment in time, effort, and dollars. But I can tell you, based on what I've seen in the past 4 years collectively, from what I knew from the previous, almost 20 years in the business, that is such a big area of opportunity. Because if you really think about all the consumers that you already have and how many of them are happy. It just, I mean, think logically. How many times do you end up going to a restaurant because somebody sends you there? Or how many times do you use an electrician or a plumber because somebody sent you there? And so when you're talking about a dollar item like a car, if you really put yourself in being able to manage effectively, especially if you've got great loyalists, like if you are really operationally locked in at the dealership level, you've got happy customers, and all of these things align, then you're really shortchanging yourself if that's my biggest regret, is not having a formalized referral program.
Great, thank you. An additional question, this is really two parts. First part is, what is the best way to access customers' email contact information to Conquest from other local dealers? The second part is to clarify, how do I know what websites buyers are shopping from, and what would be an example of formalized referral program? So we can answer the first question first. The best way to access shoppers' email contact information to Conquest from other local dealers.
Yeah, so I will tell you that there's a number of companies that can give you contact information, shopper intensity. There's good ones and there's not so good ones. The ones that I know are good, and it's not because we work with them, it's why we work with them, is IHS Polk. Because they're, the way that they access data, that they have obtained the data, is above board. And so I would rather do business with companies that are above board and have a great reputation, just like customers want to buy cars from dealerships that have, who are above board and have great reputation. Those are some of the pieces. I also mentioned Datalogics. We don't do anything with Datalogics, but I will tell you, based on what I see and what I hear, they have great data that matches up with intensity that you can overlay these email and direct mail opportunities to go and Conquest. So those are the two top ones that I would mention now. And there are some great agencies that actually get data from those companies in order to do it. So, companies like Team Velocity get great auto intent data, and the reason we know this is because we do work with them through some of our partners, and we see the show rates and the buy rates. Those really dictate if they were good data flow opportunities. I guess that's the best way I can answer that. Now, the second question, can you repeat that?
Sure. The second question to that particular question, the first question is to clarify, how do they know which websites buyers are shopping?
So I think what you mean by the question is, what endemic sites are they on? And so, those statistics are out there and obviously reported by the different endemic sites, whether it's TrueCar, AutoTrader, Cars.com, and the like. But, because we've been really focused in mobile over, I would say, the past year, and personally being very focused in mobile, because we knew that that was an area that we wanted to form a solution. There's a lot of these localized sites that get a lot of traffic that your customers might not, because they only spend so much time researching a vehicle, but they spend a lot of time on their mobile device outside of that. And so where you can take some of that data and merge it and know that those customers are the intenders. Again, companies like Datalogics can really give you some great insight into this, that you can know exactly where to advertise, when to advertise, and what mobile advertising networks. There's also companies like DataMix that have great data around financial information with customers. Again, above board, fully vetted, but allow you to really see great intention, and utilize that in a Conquest piece would be completely differentiating in the marketplace, because typically, especially at the dealer level, nobody's doing it.
Thank you, David. We have a few more questions. The next question would be, could you provide an example of a formalized referral program?
So, I don't want to, I don't, my concern is that I'm going to name one because I know them and miss 5 other ones. And I don't, especially because I don't want anybody sending me hate email afterwards. Just in working with some of our dealerships and knowing what they do, I've heard some really positive things about Remember Group. And so that is a company that has seemed to be, they've been in the space for a number of years, which is good. That means that they're actually doing something right, and that they continue to increase their share in the space, which means, again, that they're doing something right. And so that would be one. But there's several. And the best thing that I could tell you to do is contact somebody out of your 20 group who has a referral program in space. There's a dealer group up in Minnesota, and I believe it's Luther Automotive, that has arguably the best referral program, if it's still running, that I've ever seen. And my guess is it's still running because it benefited them greatly by driving those opportunities. And I've seen market share reports in that market, and obviously something's working. And just so you know, to my knowledge, Luther is not a customer of ours, so I'm not swaying you one way or another.
Thanks, David. One more question. So as a dealer, would we have to use a third party to effectively conquest? And second part of that is so we're not able to just mine our own customers.
Well, I think that, and this really ties back to the referral program. I mean, there's some smart people out there. You're probably in the group of smart people because there's a reason why you want to, not just our webinar, for any webinar, to take the time to become smarter in the space. And so could you potentially come up with your own opportunities to build a referral program in your dealership? Absolutely. Number one thing I will tell you, make sure that you're in a state that doesn't have any laws against bird dogging or referral programs. That would be my first start. My second piece to that would be start small and really think about the consumers that love you. And if you've got a group of those opportunities, test it out on them. Test out your own program. Build it out. And that way it's small in scale. You manage it. It's not overwhelming. If you pick 100 customers and go after them with an opportunity to drive new Conquest sales into your dealership, it doesn't cost you anything except for effort and opportunity. So that would be a play to start small. I think that we offer, and with webinars that we run, we try not to be an advertisement, but we know based on the factual data that you'll see in the white paper that'll be released on Thursday that we drive high conquest. And the reason that we do is very, very simple about how we drive higher amount of customers into a showroom, and then our dealerships do a really good job of selling those customers. And so that is a second opportunity. Going back to my Mile 1 days, we knew our digital efforts, both in the way that we drove customers into the dealership, how our online reputation looked, were vitally important to the way that we drove our market share up with new customers.
Great, thank you. And I think that sums up our questions for this afternoon.
Well, and just as a reminder, we will be sending out a link to the webinar and the white paper in a blog entry that will go out later this week, probably around Thursday or Friday. Our newsletter will be released, and it'll have a link to the white paper as well. But every attendee on the webinar today, as a follow-up, will get a pre-release of the white paper. And we look forward to having any questions directed back to our client service management team and our sales team as well. So thank you very much for attending today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.